Hey there, movie buffs. Today, we're diving into the world of one of Hollywood's most iconic actors, Harrison Ford. From his early days as a carpenter to his rise to fame as one of the biggest stars in the industry, Ford has graced the silver screen with some of the most memorable performances in cinema history. So grab your popcorn and get ready, because we're counting down the top 10 Harrison Ford movies of all time. Starting off our list at number 10 is The Age of Adeline. A movie that combines fantasy with romance. The Age of Adeline revolves around the title character, a woman who mysteriously stops growing older while in her late 20s. Ford plays a man who was once in love with Adeline, but obviously kept aging, as normal people tend to do, with the film ultimately exploring how this causes Adeline angst in her romantic/general life. Few people would call it one of Ford's very best movies, but it gave him a great deal to do as an actor, and he rose to the occasion, being another film that shows he can fit into the romance genre surprisingly well. The consensus on Rotten Tomatoes says as much, expressing how Ford and star Blake Lively are both good, even if the movie itself is flawed.
How is this possible? All these years, you've lived, but you've never had a life.
I don't know how.
Coming in at number 9 is American Graffiti. Though Ford had small roles in 6 prior features, George Lucas' classic American Graffiti was the first time audiences were formally introduced to him. As arrogant cowboy drag racer Bob Falfa, Ford cruised the streets of Modesto seeking out good guy drag racer John Milner, Paul Le Mat, instigating the film's exciting drag race finale. Ford didn't have a whole lot of dialogue in the film, but he did have a smolderingly sexy presence behind the wheel, which, combined with Bob's arrogant confidence, made him unforgettable. Perhaps George Lucas remembered that when he was casting Star Wars.
I bet you're smart enough to get us some brew.
At number 8, we have Star Wars, Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back. With Blade Runner, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and The Empire Strikes Back, the 1980s got off to an amazing start for Harrison Ford, seeing as all those movies are considered among the decade's best. The Empire Strikes Back is particularly spectacular, as it's a sequel that managed to outdo the already great Star Wars in just about every way, ultimately standing as one of the best blockbusters of all time. The fight against the Galactic Empire continues, only for Luke, Han, Leia, and everyone else fighting for the rebellion to find themselves challenged like never before. It gets a little darker and more intense than the first movie, but not without sacrificing entertainment value or wading into territory that feels too bleak.
I love you.
I know.
Next up at number 7 we have Raiders of the Lost Arkansas. Indiana Jones may have become a long-running action movie franchise, but all the sequels in the world could never top the purity and simplicity of the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Arkansas. Though Han Solo was Harrison Ford's breakout role, Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first big movie to feature Ford in the lead role, well and truly establishing him as a leading man. Viewers fell in love with the lead character and the series as a whole straight away, and pop culture never really looked back. Raiders of the Lost Ark continues to hold up as an essentially perfect action/adventure movie over 40 years later, and there's no question that it deserves to be considered one of Ford's very best films.
You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. I've got nothing better to do.
Coming in at number 6 is Witness. Despite decades of giving memorable performances, Harrison Ford has only received one acting nomination for the Oscars, and it was for 1985's Witness. In the film, he plays a detective who goes undercover in an Amish community and is tasked with protecting a child who was the sole witness of a brutal murder. It ranks among his very best performances, and is easily one of his most iconic that didn't see him playing a role within a larger franchise. Witness skillfully balances thriller, crime/drama, and romance elements, overall becoming an underrated movie that holds up today, thanks to its interesting premise and the strong central performance from Ford.
I'm a police officer, ma'am. I have to talk to the boy.
At number 5, we have Working Girl. A romantic comedy directed by Mike Nichols, Working Girl stars Harrison Ford alongside Melanie Griffith and Sigourney Weaver. Though she was billed below Ford and Weaver, Griffith is the protagonist here, playing a young woman who decides to screw her boss over after her boss screws her over, which sees her taking over her boss's life while she's recovering in hospital following a skiing accident. Its tendency to be syrupy and quite aggressive as a romantic comedy means that the satirical edge the film could have had is buried, but at least it works as a romantic comedy, silliness and all. While the genre isn't typically recognized by the Academy Awards, Working Girl proves surprisingly popular among Oscar voters upon release, getting a total of 6 nominations, including one for Best Picture.
But how you look.
I have a head for business.
Next up at number 4 is 42. 42 is a biopic about Jackie Robinson, a legendary athlete who made history for being the first black man to play in Major League Baseball back in the 1940s/50s. It was one of the first starring roles for the late Chadwick Boseman, who played Robinson, with Harrison Ford playing Branch Rickey, a sports executive who signed Robinson, breaking a previously held color barrier. The film covers the challenges Jackie Robinson faced resulting from his unique position at the time, ensuring 42 is a sports film that also looks at America's history of racism during the 20th century. It doesn't break any biopic conventions by any means, but tells a story worth telling, and tells it well, also being backed up by strong performances by Boseman and Ford.
Jackie Robinson, a black man in white baseball.
Coming in at number 3 is The Fugitive. Of all the 1990s thrillers Harrison Ford starred in, The Fugitive is easily the best, and it's also possible to say that it's just one of his greatest films full stop. The plot starts wonderfully simple, and gets progressively messy as things go on, with the narrative revolving around Ford's character facing a death sentence after being wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife. He escapes the law, setting off a manhunt while he desperately tries to prove his innocence. Plenty of other films have followed a similar sort of plot, meaning The Fugitive might not exactly be surprising, but it takes familiar tropes and puts them all together into a near-perfect cocktail. Ford has seldom given a better or more intense performance, and Tommy Lee Jones also shines as the deputy in charge of the manhunt that progresses as the film goes on.
I fought with this man. He had a mechanical arm.
At number 2, we have Air Force One. After earlier 1990s thrillers that saw Harrison Ford playing agents who served the U.S. president, Air Force One gave him the chance to play the role of a fictional president himself. It takes place largely on the titular plane, revolving around how President James Marshall handles the presidential aircraft getting hijacked. It can be seen as silly, or perhaps even a little derivative of Die Hard, given that movie helped popularize the idea of action/thriller movies taking place in confined locations. But it still overall works, committing to its wild premise with confidence, with things also being helped by Ford giving a naturally confident and captivating lead performance.
Atrocity and terror are not political weapons, and to those who would use them, your day is over.
And finally, coming in at number 1 is Blade Runner, a legendary science fiction movie that's eclipsed only by Star Wars. As far as Harrison Ford sci-fi films go, Blade Runner is a classic in every sense of the word. Ford plays Rick Deckard, a stoic and lonely man who's tasked with tracking down a gang of replicants who have gone rogue and are looking for a way to bypass their built-in limited lifespans. In that way, the simple premise isn't too different from Apocalypse Now, though Ford is naturally in this one a great deal more. The plot may be straightforward, but the ideas surrounding technology and human nature explored in Blade Runner are complex, and ensure it's a classic that only gets better with rewatches and the passing of time. It's beautiful, exciting, and spectacularly well made, and also gave Harrison Ford one of his most memorable and darkest lead roles.
Remember when you were 6? You and your brother snuck into an empty building through a basement window?
And there you have it, folks, the top 10 Harrison Ford movies of all time. Whether you're a fan of action, drama, or sci-fi, Ford's impressive filmography has something for everyone to enjoy. So be sure to check out these classics and see for yourself why Harrison Ford is truly one of the greatest actors of our time. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.